right, it is free patch.
And welcome everybody. We'll go to full screen here. There we go. I'm going to install Windows on this rugged tablet. So let's take a look at the tablet first off. This is a Dell. Bought a Dell. I think this is a 5717. This one is a tablet with a keyboard thing on the front. So we'll take that keyboard thing off. And now we're looking at a tablet. It's not the thinnest tablet I've ever seen. It's got this handle which is screwed on. There's screws right here and right here. This is a stylus. Got some quick buttons down here, which are pretty handy. Rubberized all around the sides. Ruggedized as well. Enforced corners. This is all rubber. This is like a film of rubber, I guess. This is a standard, like the back of a laptop. We've got two batteries. Just swapped out the batteries on this one. Here we go. Two good batteries. Let's see. We've got all kinds of ports around the outside. We'll open those up. What is that? USB? I think that's USB. Then we've got definitely USB 3, standard USB, probably an SD card, maybe a earphone or something like that. And then this one is for power. What's wrong with my lighting in here? I don't have very good lighting in here, do I? So that's that. And I guess we'll leave this one open in case we need it. Oh, we will need this one for sure because we're going to install Windows. And then let's see, it's got this kind of stand built into it, or not built into it, it's attached to it. Coming over to the front again, down on this side, we don't have nothing except an interface for this cool keyboard. And this is all magnetic, uses the power of a magnet, and it just attaches like that. I'm not doing anything, I'm just touching them together. It's super strong on there, and it works like a laptop now. If we look at that connection, it's a super strong nylon, like ballistic nylon interface for the hinge. So it's essentially fabric, but it's also super strong. And you can just pull it on and off, super nice. So along with that kickstand in the back, there's the laptop. So we're going to install Windows on it. First thing we'll do is we'll turn it on and see what happens without any Windows in it. Lit up keyboard, that's pretty handy. So it's Dell, so it's going through its Dell startup. Can't remember what the startup process. This would be like the basic machine BIOS, I guess. Wait, I got the wrong one out here. Let's change this up and get the one that actually doesn't have Windows on it already. That's what happens when it's all done. It'll have Windows on it. I was thinking when I was playing with the stylus, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't the right one. Let's test these batteries. Good to go. I just installed new batteries. Same thing. It's another one. This is the same thing. Only this one stylus is missing, so no stylus on this one. But we'll open it up, and same thing. We'll turn it on, and let's see what happens when we turn it on with no Windows in it. So you saw when there's Windows in it, it goes past the initial hardware BIOS, basic something operating system. So now what we've got is Support Assist is running a system scan to detect any possible hardware problems. You can press Escape or F2. Let's just escape it for now to stop testing, and we'll see what happens when we hit Escape long enough. Maybe. Maybe not. It is a touchscreen, but because it hasn't really started up yet, the touchscreen it's not working yet. So I guess I just turned it off, so we don't want to do that. This time we'll turn it on and we'll go to BIOS. So we're just going to hold down the F2 key as it starts up. Every computer's a little bit different, but usually you'd have to hit some key to get past an initial screen like this. So I'm hitting F2 for BIOS setup, but I don't know if it's recognizing it. Should have had it maybe a little bit earlier. I guess we'll let it test its memory here. It says it's only got a couple of seconds left. So this is the Dell software that's set up like on the system itself. And since it has a CPU, I guess, and it can see its pieces, it's starting up and it's running this BIOS. And right now it's running to test the memory, which is nice. Okay, there we go. Aborting testing. Now I'll try hitting F2. Nothing. So we'll turn it on again by hitting F2, or while hitting F2. I'll just be holding down the F2 key here. Hopefully it'll go right past this Dell BIOS into its own BIOS. New USB device, Snapdragon was installed. Interesting. Nope. It's being weird. Try this again. This time I'll tap F2. Sometimes if you hold it down, it doesn't work. Sometimes if you tap it, it doesn't work. I think that's told us that it was getting into BIOS. So now we're into BIOS. Now it's a little easier to deal with. So that first was like a system. It was part of the BIOS, I think, with some kind of a system scan that Dell is trying to do to make sure, I don't know, help people out. We're going to go straight into BIOS and we can tab through these settings over here. I'm tabbing through them with the keyboard, the up and down keys on the keyboard. There's no mouse right now. So for system information, because this is a touchscreen, I guess I can come over here and scroll down and we can see that there is a 256 gigabyte on the SATA drive. And what was the other thing I was looking for in here? We do have some RAMs, wherever that is, 16 gigs of RAMs. So that's awesome. Now we'll exit out of here. And what we'll do this time is we'll launch it with this, which is a USB drive that I grabbed from, or it's a USB drive that I have software on that I got from the Windows website, Windows 11 download, something or another. And I installed a drive. I installed it to this drive. So it downloads on another computer that's working. And then you create a download, or you get the download from Windows that creates a bootable file over here. So that's what we're going to do next is we'll just turn the thing off again by hitting the button, and now we'll turn it back on again. And we've got this USB card in here. So we'll see if I tap the F2. There we go. And then boot sequence. Actually, I don't need to do this. We'll just escape and let it go. Can you hear the stuff in the background? If any of you guys out there watching or not. So this time I'm just not going to mess with anything. I'll just let it boot, and it'll boot to that screen more than likely. Try to do another scan. Maybe not. It's taking a long time, huh? So since it's taking a long time, I'll probably just turn it off. You usually almost always turn off a computer by just holding down the power button. And I'll tap it to turn it back on. Now that I'm paying more attention to it, hopefully it'll go right past the Dell startup and get us to the screens where I can tell it to read the drive there. Nothing? Anything? So it's got a boot sequence. It's going to try to boot off of one hard drive, then the other hard drive, and then maybe off of the side drives. I'm not really sure, but we're getting some indication that something's happening here. So if there's nothing in, well, there's a empty hard drive in one, there's nothing in the second, and then there's this. So I tried booting off the empty hard drive, nothing happened. The empty slot, it couldn't boot off of. So now it's trying to boot off of the stick. We're going to install. So now it's installing. It went to the stick, and the stick has a piece of software on it that's job is to install Windows. So that we downloaded on this computer over here. So we created this boot drive, in other words. So it booted to the empty hard drive. It couldn't do anything. It didn't see anything there. It booted to the empty slot. Couldn't do anything. Booted to this, saw that there's a file. So now it's reading that file, and the first thing that file says is, welcome to Windows 11 setup. What do you want to do? So we're going to choose English and English time and currency, I guess. Keyboard format is also English. Do we want to install Windows 11 or repair it? We're going to install it. Oh, and we have to agree to this. And then next, should I grab a stylus over here somewhere? Assuming I have one somewhere. Usually have one around. Maybe somebody took them all. Is this one? No, somebody took them all. I usually have a pen from a convention or something that is a stylus. Windows is going to make you read through all this before you can click accept. Now we're waiting for the next step of the setup process. All right, now it's asking about where we want to install Windows. So it sees that we have a USB drive, which it's actually booting from right now and kind of running this installation software from. And it says that that's a 30 gig. Oh, it sees it as a USB drive, but really it's an SD card. And it's a 30-something gig SD card, probably a 32 gig SD card. So the setup software sees that on the computer. Since it's attached, it wants to know if we want to install Windows there. So be careful. We don't want to install Windows into the card. But it does see that 230-something gig empty hard drive. And we're going to say, yeah, go ahead and install to that big old unused empty hard drive over there. And what Windows will do is install itself and then leave the rest of the hard drive empty. So you'll use the rest of the hard drive for other software and for storage and that kind of thing. So it's saying ready to install. It's making sure that we want to install Windows and that we want to keep nothing on the hard drive. And since this hard drive was from a police station probably, and they deleted it when it came out of the police car, we'll just say fine. So now it's installing Windows, and it's about 6%. It'll take some time here. If this wasn't live, this is where we would fast forward, right? But this is the process, and if you end up buying something surplus or you're buying something secondhand and the person wipes the drive, it's still in there physically, but they've wiped it, then this is the process of, on this other computer, the orange one back here, I downloaded a piece of software that when I ran, it was like a compressed file. When I opened up that compressed file, it ran and said, where do you want me to create the install file? And I said, create it on this SD card right here. So it did. And this computer downloaded from the Windows website, from Microsoft Windows website, downloaded a file, which then once on this computer, I opened it and that created a file on this drive. And I can use this over and over and over again to install Windows. I haven't needed to do that in a long time, so I needed to create one. But now that I've created one, I can put this aside and not delete it, just keep the files on here and this can install Windows over and over and over again for me. That's the way that you install an operating system. So this is an empty computer, ready to go, just without any software on it. And what we did is we turned it on, and it opened up to the what's called BIOS, the basic input output system or something like that, which is the really the first piece of software you can see when a computer turns on. It's the first stuff that shows up on the screen, really. And it really is just a really, really basic way of seeing all the hardware and seeing how it all turned on and connected to each other. Sometimes it all turns on and connects, and sometimes it turns on and just is all separate. And the BIOS is a way that you can kind of determine everything's connected. I think you can actually connect some things too, but that's hardware level stuff. Then once all that's together and the computer turns on and is working, then you put on a layer called an operating system, Windows or Macintosh or Linux. And what we're installing is Windows 11. And that's what we're doing here. And again, if you think about the hardware is just a bunch of stuff, that BIOS is a very low level system of software that ties everything together at the machine level. And then the operating system lays down on top of that and interfaces with the BIOS probably, but takes care of everything, so we don't have to worry about all that hardware level stuff. We just know that our laptop works. Every once in a while we have to plug something in, or we turn it off and unscrew something and replace a part, and that's when Windows has to then recognize that part. But aside from that, Windows takes care of keeping all that stuff separate from us, so that they're isolated from us, so we don't have to worry about it as humans. It's at 37% now. So again, if this was something we were fast forwarding, you wouldn't have to watch this. Normally I would walk away, have this process working on a corner of a desk like I've got now, and just do other things while it's happening. I don't think it'll beep or anything. It'll just be done, and it'll wait for us to click next. So if anybody was out there asking questions, this is when you would ask questions. I guess I'll ask questions for anybody that might be watching this in the future then. Is this something that is worth doing? I mean, every once in a while I have to do work like this. Is this the kind of thing that is interesting? Having a walkthrough, a real-time, over-the-shoulder look at what, tech work needs to get done once in a while. Once this is done, it's a raw copy of Windows. So the first thing I like to do is personalize it. Just set Windows up so that some of the basic bells and whistles that get turned on when it first installs, I turn them off, because I don't need, for like the weather, I don't need the little kids features. I don't need any games. So I'll turn off all that stuff, or at least hide it all so I don't have to see it. I'll actually remove anything I can or just not install. As it installs here, it might ask a question or two, and I'll just leave off pieces I don't need. And we do that all the time. A lot of times we'll install software and it'll say, what language do you want? We'll say English probably. And guess what? It just doesn't install all those other languages. So that's just the first choice you have like that. So there's a lot of times like, do you want the welcome package? Well, if you've never used a computer before, you've never used the software before, maybe you do want all the walkthroughs. But those walkthroughs are often videos, right? They're data, there's some kind of images or text or something, and all that stuff either gets installed or doesn't, depending on how you kind of walk through the installation process. Now, most of the time, if somebody's setting a computer up for anybody who doesn't, you don't know the end user, you're going to probably install all that stuff, because you know that a savvy person can remove it, but the person who's not familiar would probably appreciate having that information. So that's the kind of thing when you're you've done it a couple of times, you don't need the walkthroughs anymore. You might not just might not install those in the first place. But in this case, if I don't get a choice, then I'll probably remove that stuff. I just don't want it on my hard drive. I'm never going to use it, and why waste the space? And also, I think of a computer all the time as it's like a person who's walking around talking, and it's doing tasks that you tell it to do, but it's also juggling. It's juggling a lot of things. The time, what time is it? What's going on my hard drive? What's my devices, like my mouse doing? Where's my mouse at right now? It constantly has to worry about that kind of stuff. So the less stuff you can give it to juggle, then the faster your computer can do the things you expect it to do, that you want it to do. So that gets into a couple of layers ahead of what we're at, or a couple of steps beyond what we're at right now. What's happening is Windows took our initial settings that we wanted it in English, and pretty much that's it, and it started setting it up, and now it's restarting. So probably to interface with the hardware layer, because remember the computer turned on, we went into a boot sequence. It never really had a chance to necessarily interact with what's going on in there. It might have been able to see what settings it is, but it didn't set itself up. So it's restarting to do that. Once it restarts a few times and does some and connects to an internet, which will do one of the first steps, one of the first things it'll ask is, how do I connect to an internet? This boot thing that we downloaded is current, but it can only be so current. They don't make these every day. They make them every so often. So whenever the last time they made this and we downloaded a copy of it, time has passed, and there's might be new updates from Windows, critical things for security or just basic things. Who knows? Probably a lot of things, though. So one of the first things it'll do is, after this boot drive installs the Windows in here, it is very brand new version of Windows, and it's a version of Windows that's current as of whenever this was created. Not when I downloaded it, but the thing that I downloaded when it was created. So that might be weeks ago, it might be months ago, depending on the version. It could be a long time ago. So right now it's at 42% on this restart. Back when I worked at Microsoft, I might have known really what it was doing on these restarts. I'm trying to remember if I ever paid attention, or if they ever told us what it was doing on these restarts, or if I ever, sometimes just looking under the hood, you kind of figure out what it's doing. So I don't think I know. I don't think I ever got into the installation part of it enough to know what it's doing here, actually. But we can see that it's flashing all the buttons. So this is the computer shutting down, going through and doing its hardware kind of assembly again. It's BIOS, the Dell BIOS that's built into the board is seeing what's plugged into the slots, what's plugged into the hard drive slots, what's plugged in. It's still seeing this. It hasn't told me to remove this yet, so I haven't. So it's still seeing that hard drive. It's still seeing that empty slot. I am pointing, but I don't know where they are in there. It's still seeing that USB drive plugged in, and it's now probably booting off the first hard drive. Now this created Windows on that first hard drive, that first restart, let it boot from there. The second restart, it's probably booting from there already and figuring out what all components are on there. Pretty soon, though, it's going to come to life and say, okay, I'm Windows, but I'm Windows on this machine. I want to be Windows on the internet, so tell me how to get to the internet. We'll wait for that to happen here. Look, we get a little animation. So some people that like Linux and other operating systems, they don't need all these little extras and stuff. Again, which country do we want to use? We'll stay United States. Touchscreens are awesome. So this thing's a tablet. It's a touchscreen right away. It's like having a laptop with a touchscreen, though. Is this the US keyboard we're going to be using? Yeah. I wonder what those other keyboards are like. They probably just have different letters on them. Want to add a second? Nope. So that's neat. It's letting you add more than one keyboard setup, which is actually pretty cool, especially if you do speak more than one language. You then can switch to whatever keyboard you need. So it's trying to get to my Wi-Fi. So let's go to, what am I going to do? I'll go to this and do my Wi-Fi, the actual Wi-Fi that we use here, which is all right. So now it's connecting to the internet. Like I said, it really needs to connect to the internet to get updated on whatever files are between this creation of this boot drive or boot up, whatever, and today. And there's constantly people trying to mess with everything, and there's constantly new things being created, new processes. So these updates aren't spyware. These spy updates aren't unnecessary. Some of this stuff is unnecessary, but for the most part, you don't want to shy away from these. You definitely want to do your updates, your operating system updates, no matter the operating system. You can always go through it and evaluate after the fact and determine if what they downloaded was worth it, right? Like, again, if they download a game or something, you don't need to have that game. They're going to download it anyway, but you can always remove it. Okay, so they want us to name this device, and this is when it's on a network or when we're going to be referring to it or whatever, it'll have this name. So I'll just do that privately. We'll make it called oh, I know. There we go. And next, and whenever we did that, it said it's going to need to restart because it needs to restart with its new info. We're getting pretty close to the end, though. We could probably pull this out, but really hasn't told us to not to do it, but it hasn't told us to pull it out either, so I don't think it matters. Again, the way that this works is it's when you're seeing all this kind of stuff happen, when stuff lights up and things beep and all that, that's usually all the hardware first getting power, and the hardware's job is to then say, who do I live? Where do I live? And the CPU or whatever, the motherboard, I guess, is saying with the BIOS is saying, you live with me. Now it can to give that report to the operating system. So it's going to look around for an operating system, first hard drive, second hard drive slot, USB port. It might have other things to look at, but it found an operating system on the first drive port. So it said, oh, I found an operating system. Here's who lives here. Here's who we are, the BIOS report. And then the operating system's taking it from there and saying, oh, okay, well, I'm Windows 11 and I'm going to spread out and lay down, take this chunk of the hard drive and exist. And then I'll take this chunk of the hard drive and use that as my temporary files. Those are the files that I'm going to sometimes need. Sometimes I don't, but I want to claim them. And then it'll give you the rest of the hard drive to do what you want. So now it's going to go through some other questions that Windows is going to ask. How would you like to set up this device for personal use or for work or school? I think of this as if you're going to be using it like a single person or a couple of people versus people just like a kiosk. People might walk up and use this as a just a shared resource. So we're going to go with personal use. And also has to do with some networking, I'm sure, like whether or not it's going to put extra networking features in right away. I don't know how much of this people want to follow through, since this is going to now just be mostly preferences. And then it's going to really want to connect to my Windows account, which I don't remember if I have to do or not. And then it'll finally get me to the desktop. Once it's on the desktop, of course, I can do what I want. I can start to add software to it and start doing things. Again, what I'll typically do is set up the preferences, the way the thing looks. I want to set that up to what I prefer. Like that, these computers have orange on the backgrounds on the desktops. Some people like a photograph. And then depending on how you want to set up your windows or your menus, I guess, some of the other personalization type of things, what things you might want on your desktop or not. And yeah, it's wanting me to sign in. So I forget what I do here. Learn more. Back. Sign in options. So they're just letting you pick a bunch of different ways to sign in. And this is to have your Windows connect to one of your accounts. So let me remember what I did on this. I guess I can go to this other machine and try to get my stuff. I don't know. Do you have so many passwords that you can't remember them anymore? Or do you have some kind of a system so you can remember your passwords? So let's see. We need to go to Microsoft. Sorry, I'm just sitting here typing. And let's see. And we'll see if that's working or not. All right. I guess we can show this part again. So now that it's logged into Windows, it wants you to create a PIN, a way to kind of lock the Windows part of the computer when you're walked away or when you're turning it on. So we'll just put a PIN in here. Oh, it's annoying. Using the keyboard on the screen is kind of annoying. All right, so now we've got our PIN in there. So now when we turn the thing on, it'll require a PIN. So like a lot of tablets and phones, you can. Now we want to choose location and those kind of settings. And again, this is where you can set up Windows to do things for you, or you can, if you're setting up your interactions, your notifications, what you're allowing Windows to communicate with. And oh, no, back. Dang it. Wasn't paying attention. So I hit restore like an idiot. And I don't know when the last time I may have restored a computer was, but it's sort of like on a Mac where they'll take your settings from your computer and they'll put them on the cloud. And then this thing asked, do I want to restore those settings? And I wasn't paying attention. I said yes. And it's now restoring settings from somewhere, which I've never intentionally stored. So it's just pulling, I'm assuming it's trying to pull down some inadvertent storage I might have done. So who knows which computer it's going to pull down here, if any. If anything, it's probably pulling down. Or the only thing I might have ever done is a brand new computer's backup or something, again, accidentally or inadvertently. So this is taking forever. That's one of the reasons I don't do that, but I really don't do that. My computers are usually doing different things. I set them up for different things, for different people to use or for different tasks. So I don't want the same settings on all my computers. So that's a feature, but it's not a feature I use. So right now dealing with we're all dealing with the consequences of not paying attention and clicking the wrong button during install. It's not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing would be is if this thing installed somebody else's copy of a computer that I definitely don't want, like somebody that uses a lot of tabs or a lot of junk on the desktop. But if it's setting up some basic set of a computer that I would normally use anyway, that I had set up before, then it's not that big a deal. So now it's asking, let's customize your experience. Select all the ways you plan to use your device. So you can do that. You can choose things between development, entertainment, gaming, school, creativity, business, family, or skip. And I'll just say accept for now, because I definitely don't, if it's going to use that information to not give me games, then that's awesome. So use your phone, we'll skip that. And then the next thing, so in other words, it wanted to know if we wanted to connect our phones or whatever. So we're going to not connect our phones. Thank you very much. So quit trying to connect my phone. Always have access to your recent browsing data. In other words, back up your browsing data constantly. No, thank you. Access granted. They want to give me access to Microsoft 365, which is sort of an office trial. I'll say no to that. Get free basic cloud storage with Microsoft. No, thank you. And they're just trying to say, don't give it away for nothing because it's free. I should take it. I said no. So now it's going hopefully to the last couple of steps. I'm trying to remember what else it could possibly be asking for here. It says finishing up. So I don't know how many times you may have installed Windows. That's sort of the setup screen on these. But there you go. You've got this bamboo looking trail background. You've got your toolbar down at the bottom here. Now you can click on these things and unpin them from the toolbar, which is one of the first things I'll do to start customizing it. I don't mind having the folder there, and I really don't care about search one way or the other, but we'll have to get rid of search somewhere else. Not everything unpins from the toolbar the same way. Let's see. Is that the start button? So next we can click on there and go to taskbar settings. Just holding down on the taskbar, and it's going to let us do some things like determine the tray icons. So hidden, don't want any of them. Taskbar behaviors. We want to, I don't care about optimizing the taskbar. We want to hide it automatically for sure. I don't want to show badges, and I don't want to show flashing taskbar apps. I don't want OneDrive on there. I don't know how that happened. Share any window from my taskbar. I don't care about that. Select the far corner of the taskbar to show the desktop. Okay, so there's a bunch of personalization that we did to the taskbar. And now it should drop out of there. Why isn't it dropping out of there? Taskbar behaviors. Automatically hide the taskbar. There we go. So now I like that. Now it's gone. If I want it, I can bring it up. I also want to get it over to the left side. I forgot where that justification is. Search box. Hide. There we go. Widgets off. Other system tray icons. Where was the somewhere there was a thing to turn them over to the left there instead of being centered. Unpin File Explorer, or so I'll usually go through these different settings and make it look the way I want it to look in the long run. So with that, we'll get rid of Edge, throw that into the recycle bin. And I guess one of the last things I'll do is, how do you get this to happen? You tap on the thing, we go to personalize. This will be the screen, and I'll go to background, and I'd much rather have it be from the drop down solid color. And I usually either go with a green or an orange or a blue. So that way I'm not looking at a color back there all the time, and I can see my screens a lot easier. So that's my preferences. I don't know what yours might be, but that's setting up Windows from a boot drive on a Dell 5717 rugged tablet. This came out of a cop car. These are great values. They're rugged. awesome tablets just as is. If you can get one used, then I highly recommend it. It's great value for the money. Now I've got a Windows 11 tablet that's fully capable and quite rugged. Fast to get into action here whenever I need it. Thanks everybody for joining in. Hope this helps. There it is, sitting on the startup. I'll go in and remove all this startup garbage as well.